Hey, it's Jessica DeMassa with WTF Health. What's the future health? I'm talking to the who's who of health tech and healthcare innovation. And today we're going to talk all things health tech market, which is getting a little crazy out there, and chronic condition care with one of my favorites, the founder and CEO of Vida Health, Stephanie Tilenius. Stephanie, it's great to have you here.
It's great to be here. I haven't seen you in person in a long time, so it's great to reconnect.
No, yeah, I'll take the virtual visit if I have to. You're in a hybrid care model, right? Hybrid interview model. Well, it's so great to have you here. And it's like the timing of this conversation, like, couldn't be any crazier because of what just happened with Silicon Valley Bank. And so I actually am, and I have to ask you about this because not only are you, a health tech CEO entrepreneur, but you've actually been in the tech business since the dot-com boom. And so I'm curious to get your take on this. What happens now that there's no Silicon Valley Bank? I mean, I keep hearing, the news keeps reporting that there's questions about, what's going to happen to the innovation economy without that bank kind of, backing the innovators, backing the venture capitalists. So what's your take on this? I'd love to hear.
I mean, at a high level, I think we're all going to be okay. But I will say that, I went through 2001 and 2008, and this feels worse. I think it's because it feels like a black swan event that could have potentially been avoided. I mean, it really is a series of unfortunate events that led to a Twitter-fueled run on a bank that led to the demise of the bank that we've all been working with for 4 decades. So it was quite shocking. But I do think that there will be somebody that steps in and replaces SVB, and we'll move forward. But it is shocking, and it's disappointing that it happened. It probably could have been avoided if a series of actions had been taken that were a bit more prudent. And we didn't have social media in 2001 and 2008 the way that we do now, and so this Twitter fueled bank run was just unprecedented.
I mean, it's really interesting that you put it that way because I didn't even really connect the social media piece of that to the bank run and then to its ultimate demise. So I think that's a really interesting. Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. What are you hearing anything? I mean, like, obviously, I mean, like you said, you've got you've been around there for a long time. You've been through this before. It's interesting to me that you feel like this might actually be worse. And what about it makes it feel worse to you? The fact that it is so kind of out of nowhere?
Yeah, it just felt like out of nowhere. It was so SVB, essentially 50% of startups and venture capitalists use SVB. So they're the name in the industry. And I guess they were going to have a downgrade from Moody's, and they were ready to raise 2.5 billion from Goldman, and they had commitments. And they announced they ended up having to sell a bond portfolio that they invested in, and they shared the losses. And the way that they did that precipitated a bank run. There were several VCs that told all their startups to take money out immediately. There was $42 billion that was withdrawn on Thursday, and then the FDIC stepped in Friday morning, and boom, it was like the fastest thing I've ever seen. But the underlying bank itself was, I mean, yes, they had some losses from bonds, but it would have been okay.
Yeah.
And so this Twitter fueled bank run was part of the reason that the FDIC had to step in. And then furthermore, during the weekend, Yellen first came out and said that they weren't going to do anything. And then it was like more Twitter conversation. And by Sunday, Yellen came in and said, okay, the depositors are going to be protected. So it's just fascinating to see the chain of events and the role that social media played in getting to this place. Now, and we're all going to be okay. The depositors are going to be okay. There's plenty of banks to step in. And I actually think it's an opportunity for some banks to get the assets because there's really strong underlying assets. So it will be okay. It's just it was just quite a shock to the system.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people, I mean, obviously rocked by it. Like, I mean, it's a disconcerting feeling to have that happen. And I think a lot of people.
yeah, as a founder and CEO, like I was like, are we going to get our money? We have money in
Yeah.
multiple banks, but I was like, are we going to get our money out of SVB? Like there was a point where you really thought you were going to lose all your money in SVB. So that's pretty scary.
Wow, that's absolutely scary. How do you navigate that as a CEO, Stephanie?
Well, I mean, we were very rational. We jumped in. We understood exactly the nature of our accounts. We knew that our sweep account was safe. And we made plans to use other banks to pay payroll and connect them to ADP to pay payroll. But, credit to our finance team, they were working like all weekend to set this up.
Yeah. That's incredible. Well, I mean, we're glad that you guys are okay and that, as okay as you can be in this situation, and that, I like hearing that you are optimistic that we are going to be okay. It just may take some time to get there. And the thing that is interesting to me about this is that it seems like already, like health tech in particular is kind of, I mean, this year has been hard. Like the end of last year was hard. Like we've seen, funding sentiment shift. We've seen some businesses go through layoffs. I mean, and this was right. I mean, we were like in the best years of our life during the pandemic as far as business was concerned. And then it's like, the party was over and like, here we are now. I'm curious to hear about your take on like the health tech market writ large. And specifically, one of the things I want to start with is one of the things that was like the big deal during the boom years of virtual care and digital health and telehealth during the pandemic. I got to ask you, Stephanie, about that Teladoc-Livongo deal and the write down that has happened since. So when that first happened, for those of you out there watching who don't remember, we actually talked to Stephanie. We got her take on that deal, like literally as it happened. And we looked at it, and I think the whole industry did, is it was a real seminal moment for digital health and health tech and the future of virtual care. I'm curious now, like on your perspective, do you feel like that sentiment changes? Like, does that deal still mean as much to the history of health tech after these write-downs have been taken by Teladoc that basically take away half of the value of what they paid for that Livongo asset? What do you think?
Oh, I still think the rationale for the deal and the notion of an integrated model with value-based care is foundational to healthcare and will happen. And I think the 18 billion to the write-offs. I mean, look, I learned a lesson early on, like you're never as good as they say you are, and you're never as bad as they say you are. Right. So, when you talk about a party, it was a party. And like, we should all realize that it was, and now we're at the other end and we got the hangover going, right? Like, so
Totally.
we've got both sides here and we've got to get back to the middle and the equilibrium, and we will get back there. And so, meanwhile, the demand for chronic care and virtual care is ever present, and it is even more important. In fact, with post-COVID, like there's more incidence of diabetes and cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and there's more need for our services. Employers, know they have to provide services. Their employees are demanding it. Obesity is like at an all-time high. It's really crazy. We have 42% obesity in this country. So, so I think, the party was a little bit aggressive, and now we got to get back to an equilibrium.
I like how you started your answer out here talking about, integrated virtual model. And I have to ask you about this. So I'm reading a press release actually about Vita Health and the new partnership you have with Select Health. And we'll get to that, don't worry. But one of the things that really struck me when I was reading this release is it's like Vita is described as a virtual cardio-metabolic care company. And I'm like, what are these words that like didn't even exist a couple of years ago? And so I want to know, like, broadly speaking, like, even as you're thinking about like the way your own company is being described, or that you guys are describing it, virtual cardio-metabolic care, it wasn't too long ago that like you and others in this space were digital health solutions, digital health point solutions to be exact, right? The terminology around the types of care and services that you and other businesses like you provide is changing. And I'm curious to hear, like, do you think that that's also reflexive as we look at like moving from digital health to calling things, virtual care? Do you think that that's reflexive of how the industry is thinking about, health tech enabled care solutions, how it's changed over the last 5 years?
I do think that everything that we've been working on and other companies as well will just be embedded in care. It'll just be considered part of the spectrum, and we'll always have some kind of hybrid value-based care model between, there are some things that are relevant to do in person, and you really need to see the doctor or the provider, and others will be virtual and continuous and day-to-day. And we essentially provide really a full spectrum of cardio-metabolic care, everything from pre-diabetes, diabetes, hypertension, CHF, COPD, to full more complex diabetes, where you've got all those conditions at once, you're on multiple meds. And I think you're seeing an increasing recognition in the market that these point solutions, where you just, like, I remember CB Insights had a study where they showed the cardiometabolic spectrum, and they had like weight loss and pre-diabetes. They had multiple companies in each of these spaces: weight loss, pre-diabetes, diabetes, complex diabetes, diabetes reversal, and there were multiple companies in each space. And if you put yourself in the shoes of a buyer, an employer, or a payer, that's a lot to digest. And we're increasingly seeing RFPs that include all of those things. They just want it all in one place. And so we are moving away from this point solution world where some employers have like 30 or 40 point solutions. It's very hard to manage and very hard to enroll. And now we're moving into a recognition that, there's going to be these one company solutions that really meet all the needs of the employer base or the payer, and that they're looking at these conditions, combining and looking at mind and body, and looking at full spectrum, low acuity to high acuity, and simplifying the enrollment and the engagement. And so we're starting to see that shift.
Well, I think too, it's interesting how Vita has evolved. You had always started out from the beginning, I remember, as integrated mind and body. And so there was always a mental health component, which, as the years went on of just me following you and your business, other businesses who were competitive were starting to add these services on, through acquisitions or development of those service lines. And you guys always had the mental health component along with the physical component. And then the things, though, that have been interesting to me that you guys have added on, over the years, one of them is prescribing. And so I remember it was a few years ago, you guys started prescribing broadly for some, low acuity mental health disorders, for diabetes, for a bunch of things. And now I've got to ask about this new offering. I saw GLP-1s. You guys are prescribing GLP-1s for that class of drugs that are now approved for weight loss. So why take Vita into that direction? That kind of stopped me for a second, because you guys have always been in diabetes. You've had this ability to prescribe. You could have done this sooner, but it's a new addition now. Why now?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So, the reason we launched prescribing to begin with is that we want to handle all acuity levels, and there are individuals that do need some prescriptions. And we are at the heart of what we do, a behavior change model, and so we will take people off their meds as well. And we pride ourselves on, taking Medicare Advantage patients, for example, and helping them lower their A1C 2 points, and lose 15 to 20 pounds or percent of their weight, depending on their obesity levels, and then taking them off insulin. So we do prescribing and deprescribing. And the reason for GLPs right now is just that it has become, first of all, they're newly approved for obesity. So they used to be used just for diabetes. And the results are really amazing. They're showing 15 to 20% weight loss. And there are, individuals that have greater than a BMI that really could use these medications, and they might be better off doing this than bariatric surgery. And we constantly are taking an approach where we're looking at all acuity levels. And so there are patients that need this. And then we also have employers that are starting to put this in their formularies and cover it. And so we're taking a very unique approach in the market, where we're looking at a step function, like a step therapy model. So we really work with the patient first on behavior change, see if we can affect change without the drugs. And then if the drugs are necessary, we work with them on that. And then one of the big questions that has not been answered yet in the industry is, how long do people stay on these drugs? Because they are very expensive. And, we're working to, with employers in our current employer book of business to say, okay, they're going to cover it on their formulary. We're going to provide behavior change along with it. And then can we take people off the meds and successfully sustain the weight loss? And nobody's proven that yet, right? I mean, it's very early days. So.
It is. And that's one of the, I think right now, as more and more businesses are launching the services that prescribe and then maybe do wrap around some sort of behavior change coaching. That's the thing that seems to be like a little controversial about these drugs is, how long do people stay on them? They're very expensive. And what happens when they come off? I mean, is the behavior change something? Behavior change is so hard. Like we know that for everything. And so it's like, what happens then? So I think it's interesting to hear about your step approach. And I'm curious, with all the experience that you have doing behavior change over the years and really taking that integrated mind-body approach, like say a little bit, Stephanie, about how you guys feel like you're really in a position to kind of help maybe build a real successful use case for GLP-1s.
Yeah, I think we're uniquely positioned because when you think about sustained weight loss, especially if you're over 30 BMI and you have real obesity and you've had it for a decade or more, you really need to look at all aspects of your life. And so it requires a foundational view, and there might be co-occurring anxiety or depression that's related. So most likely you have to take a holistic approach. I'd be hard pressed to believe that you can really change obesity without looking at, hormone levels, nutrition, sleep, stress, exercise, mental health. There's so many components, and these drugs have side effects as well. So it's complex to manage them. So I think we're uniquely positioned to look at a step therapy model and to really affect changes. The estimates for this market is that, there's 42% obesity. So everybody wants to see these successful.
Yeah, and this is one of those
fortunately or unfortunately, I think, the Kim Kardashian and the Elon Musk talking about it on Twitter has created this kind of frenzy. But we have to look at the hardcore reality, which is obesity is a big problem. We also have to, look at solutions that are lower cost because these are really expensive drugs. And what you're seeing in other countries like Canada and the UK is they are starting to prescribe them. Now, in those countries, the GLPs cost a third of what they do in the US, but they are started to look at prescribing them for obesity. And so, and the ADA is working with Medicare in our country to figure out how to have obesity essentially marked as a chronic condition, which it is, and to figure out better treatment. Yeah.
Wow, Stephanie, I feel like I put you through the ringer here. It's like I ask all these very difficult, controversial questions. There's so much to talk about. Let's talk a little bit about Vida Health. I want to hear some good news about what's going on. You guys just signed a new deal with Select Health, and I'd love to hear a little bit about that. Famously, you guys have a really great relationship with Centene. Get us caught up. What's going on at Vida? How are you guys doing?
Well, we've just been executing throughout the pandemic and post-pandemic and scaling. And, we have a really robust employer and payer business. And we just announced Select Health, which is a large Medicare and individual plan. And so we're serving all of their members with a full cardio-metabolic solution. So in everything from diabetes, hypertension, CHF, COPD, depression, anxiety, et cetera, like a full mind and body service, which we're very excited about. And then we just won a government contract, which we haven't announced it yet fully, but it's we're really excited about that as well. And so we're continuing to. The great thing about our platform is that it covers both employer and payer, and it's the reason we're winning in the market is we have really strong clinical outcomes. We offer 100% fees at risk because we trust we deliver on the outcomes, and we offer an ROI guarantee on our savings, and we know that we achieve medical cost savings. We have proof that we're lowering inpatient, ER visits. We have a 15% reduction in hospitalizations in 6 months, which is pretty significant. And we're showing more than $2,000 of annual savings for patients that are higher utilizers. And then, if they have social determinants, then it's double that. That's been really one of the interesting areas for us in the last, especially during the pandemic, is getting into, working with large payers that have populations where there are social determinants. And, we've expanded our network to make sure we have 1 in 2 people of color as providers. And we've, because we have medical nutritional therapy, we get really deep with the person about their financial insecurity, their food insecurities, and really make sure that we're helping them with guidance that can be customized to their life and their social determinants.
That's fantastic. And I've always kind of watched that, especially with your partnership with Centene, that population has always been something that you guys have really tended to. And so it's exciting to hear you even kind of go double down on that in terms of making sure that you have representation in your provider network and that you are addressing these more, social determinants, socioeconomic things that contribute to health. I mean, like, those are definitely factors. Any moves to go the Omada Health way and try to get integrated at the point of care? I mean, I just talked to Sean. I told you so. It's like they've got a partnership with Intermountain. They're getting prescribed by primary care docs now. I mean, any moves toward that direction, or continue just with the massive opportunity in front of you with health plans and self-insured employers?
Well, we do have a lot of execution just with our current business. I think that the PCPs should prescribe services like us and Omada. It makes sense. Like, we are doing something really complementary to the doctors. It enables doctors to practice at the top of their license and us to cover the day-to-day continuous care that drives outcomes. And we do work with PCPs in our various deployments, especially with payers that have value-based contracts with PCPs, and we integrate with them. So I do think that you're in 5 years' time, hopefully even sooner, you're going to see fully embedded, virtual care services in value-based contracts with, PCPs recommending us as providers in this holistic approach to handling chronic disease. It makes sense. It needs to just expand faster, actually. I mean, I think, I think all of us, like, I was at the Morgan Stanley CEO conference last week and in digital health, and all of us are like, we're having such a big impact. We're driving clinical outcomes. We just need to scale faster, right? And Medicare and everybody else just needs to deploy us faster.
Well, no, I mean, that's like really encouraging to hear, because I think, I remember even, pre-pandemic, there were still so many questions about this space. And so to hear, companies like yours who've, been through that and like are on the other side of it, and you guys have these clinical outcomes, have these, even the cost savings outcomes. And all of those things are so important to just proving the fact that this stuff does really work. And I love how you keep saying that it will be integrated into just care, and that's I like the optimism stuff. I mean, I feel like all along, even though we've talked about such like, it's so many things here where it's like, it feels like the sky is falling. It's like the optimism is still there. So I'm excited to hear that from you. Last thought from you, like, tell me, what are you excited about? I mean, what's next? I mean, you've mentioned the big government contract that you're not going to, fill in the details about, but we'll look for that press release. But like, what else gets added to Vita? Or like, what do you guys, like, what are you excited about for this year ahead?
Well, we're just excited about deploying large customers and, continuing to scale and get clinical outcomes at scale. Our studies have thousands of participants, so we've already proven that, but it's just continuing to grow and really making a dent in healthcare. I mean, getting to a place where we are the default for obesity, diabetes, any cardiometabolic disease. So, virtual care is still really early, and we have a long way to go to being that default solution. So I think we're all angling to get there as fast as we can.
I love it. I love the motivation here behind this, or like in a hurry. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for taking this time to stop rushing into the market and sit down with me and have this chat and give us your perspective on like such a wide ranging series of topics here about the market and just kind of even where Vita fits into it. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
That's great seeing you.
All right. Well, we'll have to catch up again soon. That's Stephanie Tilenius. She is the founder and CEO of Vida Health. We picked her brain about everything. If you want to catch more interviews with the who's who of health tech, as they are changing the way that we do healthcare, head on over to my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/WTF Health. I'll talk to you guys real soon. Stephanie, thank you again. Bye.